Good morning, everyone. It's Mark Schultz here, and we're here with another edition of Recovery in Aviation. And we're here talking live today about blockchain. This is part 2 in a 3-part series about blockchain. Last week, we talked about blockchain, the attributes of blockchain. We're going to cover a little bit of that again today. We're going to jump right into what business problems exist in the industry and how can they be solved revolving around blockchain. Don't go away. This is going to be an interesting conversation today. All right, we're going to bring some guests in with us here today, and want to bring in with you today 2 guests that we have. We have Kiran Prakash and we have LV. LV shortens his name. LV, tell us your full name so people really know what it is.
Thanks, Mark. Happy to be back here. My full name is Lakshmi Nrsimham Vemuganti Venkata Raghavendra. So
okay, we're going to call you LV, all right? Okay, that sounds good. All right, very good. And then we have Kiran Prakash. And both LV and Kiran are here with a company called Real Variable, and I thought maybe I would just kick it off by just starting and saying, hey, LV, who is Real Variable, and what do you do at Real Variable?
Real Variable is a company focused on enterprise supply chain solutions using blockchain as a framework. We are a 3.5-year-old company. I am one of the co-founders and CTO of Real Variable.
Okay, very good. So you're the CTO, and the reason we're bringing this together today is because you guys have a lot of experience in the actual implementation of blockchain platforms and solutions. Great, good. Now, I also have with us Kiran. Kiran, who are you, and what do you do with Real Variable?
Hi, Mark, and a very warm welcome to everybody on the call on this live broadcast. So I am Kiran Prakash. I am an AVP at Real Variable. I come with around 12 years of supply chain experience, out of which almost 4 to 5 years has been in the aviation industry.
Excellent, very good. So what we're doing is we're bringing in technical and practical knowledge, and we're going to have this conversation today about blockchain. And specifically, we're going to focus on business problems in the industry is what we're going to do today. Now, before we get going here, I just wanted to mention to you is it really helps us out a lot when you're watching out there if you'll share this broadcast. And if you take a look at the screen where you're watching right now on your live broadcast, down in the bottom right-hand corner there's a little button that says share. If you would help us out and share this, we can get the message out. We are really passionate about recovery in aviation and different aspects of it. And if you would help us, you can be part of helping us to drive recovery in aviation by sharing this broadcast. Also, during the broadcast, you are going to have the ability to be able to comment and to be able to ask questions during the broadcast. And so right down there in the box, you can put in your questions during the broadcast. But before we move on, I always like to know who's out there watching and who is, on our live streams. And so if you would please just give us a shout out, put in the comment box, where you're coming from. We usually have people all around the world. If you would just let us know who you are and where you are, just to kind of get things going, I would really appreciate it. We like to recognize people and just that they're watching out there, and then you'll have a chance to engage with us on questions, as well. So very good. So let's get going here. Hey, listen, last week I felt like we had a really good discussion on blockchain, and I want to thank the 2 of you guys, for doing that. I really, really appreciate it. And to kick things off, we wanted to just do a little bit of a recap. I'm going to come to you, LV, and last week we talked a little bit about what blockchain is. We talked about the concepts of distributed ledger. We talked about how it's immutable or unchangeable. We talked about different things with regard to that. LV, let's kick us off by just reminding people, what is blockchain and why is it important to us right now?
So distributed ledger technology is the basic framework on top of which blockchains work, right? So the blockchain is the underlying layer for the distributed ledger technology, where the consensus and the creation of blocks, the transactions happen, and the decentralized nature of decision making in terms of the network in terms of participants is what gives the ability for the blockchain to be being democratic, being independent of central authority. But then there are implementations of blockchain which does not necessarily have to be decentralized completely. It can be pseudo decentralized, where there is a group of private participants create their own network, and then start collaborating among themselves using the distributed ledger framework with the underlying blockchain mechanism.
Yeah, good, LV. There was a number of things that I remembered from last week, and which also you just brought into it. And one of them is that we talked about the concept of collaboration. Okay, and I remembered that. That was something I remembered because it was like it's giving us a new environment in which we can collaborate. Okay, that was number one. Right. Number two is that you talked about the concept of distributed ledger. All right. So in other words, we had multi parties that were involved in being able to access these transactions and this information. Okay. And then we also talked about the fact that it was unchangeable and that there was transparency, to many people out there now. So we're going to talk today about how those features or how those capabilities present new opportunities to be able to solve problems. But before we go talk about how they can solve problems, we want to talk about what the problems are. All right. Hey, listen, as we go forward, I always like to just recognize, when people are jumping on and joining us. And I noticed that I had a good friend of mine. I don't know. He used to be a friend of mine, Rex Douglas. He was always hard on me, but I worked with him at Boeing, and I noticed that Rex is out there watching. Hey, Rex, I'm glad that you're on with us today. And I miss you giving me the ribbing, when we worked together. But it was fun working with you when I worked at Boeing. And then we also have people that are joining us from other places around the world on YouTube. It doesn't say where, but they're definitely interested in talking about distributed ledger technology and decentralized networking, but that's good. So listen, if you're out there and if you're watching, just keep telling us where you are. We have Rosemary Brewster who's joined us, and it looks like she's joined us from Washington, from Hobart, Washington. So we have people joining from the U.S. and Seattle area and other places really around the world. So great. Hey, listen, I appreciate you being with us, and let's jump right in to continue this conversation. Listen, we talked about those things about blockchain, LV. Now I want to move on to just a couple of additional things that are also important with respect to blockchain. And one question I have had people ask me is that why are there so many different blockchains out there? Why is there different variations of it or flavors or different types of blockchain that exist out there?
Right. So as with any technology, right? So it started as a medium of asset transfer between two different parties, right? In this way, while keeping the cryptographic audit log of the transaction. But then later, there was a need in terms of there was a need that was felt and understood in terms of creating blockchain to be able to having business rules, which the network could use to collaborate. So that is when the next level of blockchains came in picture, whether it is IBM's Hyperledger or Ethereum, with the ability of smart contracts, what they call. And then there are other flavors that have come in terms of fixing either the shortfalls of some of these blockchains that have evolved, and then trying to make sure that you build a certain solution for a specific industry. So that is how the evolution of a blockchain has been happening, and then I'm sure there will be a few more that
Yeah. So LV, is it certain platforms or certain methodologies are stronger at different things? Is that why they've evolved, in different ways? Okay, right. So it's just like anything else out there is that a particular solution is developed around a particular business problem. And so we find that certain blockchain platforms end up being more capable of doing certain things. And I'm certain that over time, there will be more standards that will evolve, revolve around this. And so we'll see some of those emerging. Hey, listen, I want to continue to call out some friends of mine. I see Max Oliveira jumped on, and I appreciate Max. I've known him for many, many years. Actually, we used to work together at Northwest Airlines, many years ago. That's Mike. There we got Max. He's in Minneapolis, and great history of Northwest Airlines and Airbus and United Airlines and other places. I think he's just relaxing right now. I'm not sure what he's doing, and then I have another business associate of mine, Mike, and Mike's with a company called Fuchs, and they do lubricants. And I'd like to actually, as we move forward, when we talk about one of the business problems is that how do companies like that, leverage, blockchain? So, Mike, if you had any questions out there about leveraging like technology in like a manufacturing environment, it would be really great if you'd ask some questions. So let's continue to move on. A few more things about blockchain. Let's bring a couple of other ideas in. Now, I know people talk about things being immutable, all right? And LV, would you quickly just say what immutable means and why it's important to blockchain?
Sure. The very fact and the nature of blockchain being having the distributed ledgers, which means that the information that is contained in each of the ledger has to be the same for the consensus mechanism to work. So even if one party tries to change any entry in the ledger from a historic perspective, the rest of the ledgers will reject it because it does not match. So that is where the immutability of information comes in. And then even if somebody tries to change that, at the exact time, at the exact moment in time, it has to change across all the ledgers, which is going to be computationally difficult.
Okay, all right. So I think being immutable and being accessible, those things seem like they're in conflict with one another, but clearly they work together. Hey, we had another person join us, another business associate of mine, Tim Alden, and Tim Alden is with Rusada, and they're an MRO platform company. And I would imagine as we go forward, there might be some questions with someone who's running an MRO ERP system on how blockchain might be able to be used in something like that. And so, Tim, if you have questions, you're also free to ask questions as we go along here. Hey, next question going on here is that you hit it on a little bit, but I wanted to bring this one out specifically. Is that what is blockchain transparency? I hear people talk about blockchain transparency. What does that mean?
Take an example of a decentralized ledger where everybody in the ledger has access to the information, right? So in an anonymous way, even if you say that, so which means that the transactions are visible to everybody, but you would not know that the transaction happened between which parties because of the nature of anonymity. When it comes to the private blockchains, where you can actually open up the information to the parties which are relevant to the transaction, which means that the transparency is given. You don't have to really bring the information out of one particular system or one particular solution and then send an Excel sheet or send something else to somebody. So the transparency is out there in terms of what has happened because of the immutability and the historic audit nature.
Yeah, I would imagine that records and things like that are going to rely more and more on transparency, so that when it becomes public information, that people can access those records. Yeah. Hey, one more quick recognition of somebody before we go on to talking about business problems. We have Asad Ali. He's coming to us from Texas. Hey, I appreciate everybody that joins, and appreciate you jumping on today. It's great to have such a big audience from around the world. Appreciate you joining. Anybody out there, you have questions? We're going to jump in now and be taking questions as well. Hey, so I told you today that we were going to focus on business problems in the industry. And specifically, we're going to take the angle of what kind of business problems might be able to be solved by blockchain. All right. So we've picked a few common ones that people have out there today. And so we're going to just sort of hit on them. The first one that we are going to talk about is going to be the aspect of supply chain and supply chain logistics. So LV, I wanted to go to you and say, if I'm looking at the problem that people have out there today, whether it be in parts and materials or manufacturing or anything, anybody that has a lot of parts or assembly, processes, what are the problems that exist out there today in supply chain that might be able to be solved by, blockchain solutions?
Yeah. So when I try to define the problem statement, I would probably define the problem with the information flow. May not necessarily be the actual on the ground supply chain problems, right? So with the information, in the context of information exchange or information flow, if you see, with the advent of this contract manufacturing and then offshore manufacturing, you have many participants and many players taking part in the supply chain, and each of them do not necessarily communicate with the entire value chain. They only communicate with their next level customer, or they only communicate with next level supplier. So as the communication has to move forward in the value chain, there is no seamless mechanism in terms of the information flow that needs to happen across the value chain. That is one of the fundamental problems that we are trying to tackle in terms of creating a multi-party collaboration using blockchain as a tool.
So what you're really telling me is that the great population of people that need to be involved in supply chain and logistics, they don't have the information that they need and the visibility that they need in order to be able to, solve all the problems that they have. Right. Okay. So I wanted to go ahead.
Except for the immediate customer and immediate supplier.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Okay, right. Perfect. I understand. So, Kieran, I'm going to come to you in a second here, but I like to sometimes frame some of the responses that we have around people's questions. And I think that somebody on YouTube here asked a really good question. If we could put up the question from YouTube here. maybe you guys could pronounce the name for me here. I can't. It's Siri Kenneth. There we go. Anyway, if we could maybe address this question, I think that kind of leads us into sort of a response that you have, Kieran. Is that how is blockchain disrupting the supply chain industry, and what are the benefits of blockchain and supply chain? All right, and so LV, you just talked about how we now have better visibility and better collaboration. What does that really mean to the supply chain industry, Kieran?
Yeah. So blockchain in supply chain is becoming as important as it can be. So what do I mean by that is blockchain being an immutable and encrypted ledger brings in more trust and brings in more faith in the ecosystem. So not that it is not there today, but that it brings that additional layer of trust between multiple parties, and whenever there is a goods which moves from party A to party B, it gets recorded onto an immutable ledger, and smart contracts algorithms get executed, which ensure that both parties agree to the transaction which has been made. And at the same time, what it does is it brings in more efficiency and more trust in the ecosystem. So today there is a lot of disputes which happens, there is back and forth which happens between various parties. So blockchain being an immutable ledger actually takes away all those complexities, and smart contracts being a kind of a digital form of your physical contract document brings in even more efficiency with respect to sales, purchase, returns, and even warranties for that matter.
Okay, so Kieran, I understand that your company has implemented some of these blockchain technologies or approaches, in supply chain industries. Can you tell me what kind of an impact that's had? Now, I know theoretically we think about these things and we say, oh, if you could all just collaborate better together, and if you could see better what everybody's doing, it would all be better. All right, but how do we prove that using a blockchain technology is better than anything else out there for doing that? Can you help me just take it down one level deeper? Help me understand that.
Right. So we have done some research, Mark, as far as blockchain adoption in supply chain is concerned. So as per SCM review, which is one of the leading magazines as far as supply chain management is concerned, the net benefit by using a blockchain in a multi-party collaboration will bring in almost 13% of net benefit to the entire ecosystem. So when I say 13%, it means the entire ecosystem will benefit by 13% improved efficiency across the value chain when there is a movement of goods between different parties in the value chain. And second most important thing what this kind of blockchain technology brings in is the proof of delivery smart contracts. So there is always a contract or smart contracts, and there is a digital proof established that a good has moved from party A to party B, or it has been shipped from one location to another, and it has reached its transit point or its end point. So all this getting recorded onto a digital ledger or an immutable ledger, which is visible to everybody, brings in that confidence, that transparency in the entire ecosystem. And last but not the least, the digital audit trail. So you have your entire digital audit trail of a part which is actually moving right from your suppliers, contract manufacturers, tier 3, tier 4 suppliers, right up the value chain when the OEM actually ships the part to the end customer. So this entire transaction, when it gets recorded onto a digital ledger, that brings in the digital audit trail, which is very useful when it comes to audits and other places, which in most places happens with respect to manual documents or paper-based documents today.
So, Kieran, we all like to believe that we're efficient already. We like to believe that we're as efficient as we possibly could be. And so, we have a reluctance to look at something and go, how much better could it really be? I mean, do you have any specific experience from some of the things that you've done on how much improvement can be made in a supply chain, through the application of these better collaboration and blockchain platform technologies?
Right. So one of the use cases which we did for a major leading auto OEM in the APAC region was something similar, wherein we actually did this the part in transit tracking from the manufacturing facility right up to the dealers, which eventually goes to the end customers. So what we have seen, and in this particular implementation, we had OEMs involved, we had multiple logistics provider involved, and we had a large set of dealer network also involved. So what benefit we actually saw by coming and by the entire ecosystem coming onto a single blockchain platform was that the time to locate a particular part or a particular order was reduced from several hours to a few seconds. Just by logging in and by querying the part number or a PO number, you can actually get the latest information of where that particular part or PO is. And as far as dollar value saving is concerned, we are looking at, or we have seen almost $1 million worth of savings per quarter for the entire ecosystem. When it comes to the OEMs, when it comes to the multiple logistics providers, and also the dealer network. So blockchain as a technology, blockchain as a solution can have immense business benefits. It is also possible that the organization may not really know that there is a problem. So in certain cases, I would say blockchain is a problem, is a solution looking for a problem. When you are not defined the problem itself, or when the organization
all right.
defines the problem.
Yeah. Hey, we have a generic LinkedIn user who's asked a question. There's no name on it, but it says LinkedIn user. But I think it's relevant to what you're speaking of here right now. If we could throw that up on the screen there. It says, do you see that blockchain will eventually eliminate the need for personal relationships and expensive due diligence within a supply chain? So how does blockchain optimize the working ability between people, okay, and maybe due diligence on records and that type of thing within the context of supply chain? Can you answer this question?
Yeah, yeah. So that's a very good question. I mean, I'll again go back to the concept of smart contracts. So we have this something called smart contract, which is a kind of digital programmable code which can be modified, based on the contracts between the various parties in the value chain. So when we have a smart contract written onto the blockchain, which is a kind of digital equivalent of your physical contract document, it does result in lot of due diligence which will otherwise not be required in an otherwise scenario. So definitely I see a huge value with respect to due diligence, the audits, the physical audits, paper-based audit trails which happens, in which a lot of audit efforts goes in, and personal relationship will always be there. I mean, there is no denying the fact that personal relationship will continue to be there between various parties, but blockchain just brings even an additional layer of security and trust between two business entities, because as far as business transactions are concerned, it is going to be a step over the personal relationship. So these kind of digital technologies do really matter even in the event.
Okay, good, very good. Hey, listen, I had a user ask a question a little bit earlier, and I wanted to address it, so I hope Jim Fitzgerald is still there. But I wanted to just carefully answer it because it has to do with the engine, fire recently for the United Airlines aircraft, Denver to Honolulu. We all know about it. It's been all over the news. And I am always very, very careful to never, jump to any conclusions. And so, Jim, I don't have any particular specific opinion about that situation or about, what the failure was and what the causes might be. But I do think it's a valid question that says that is there a way that you can optimize supply chain or increase safety or improve record keeping? So let's take out this particular situation and not speculate on anything that happened with this airplane. But let me ask the two of you: is that by applying blockchain technologies and by applying optimization of supply chains, is there a way to potentially improve record keeping, improve safety, improve collaboration? Can you comment on that in the context of preventing problems in mechanical failures, maybe?
Yes, Mark. So one of the key features, or one of the key outputs that we see with the blockchain network is the truth, or the way that the part has been used, or the way the part has been treated, with the proper supporting audit trail, which Kiran is talking about. So you could apply the relevant technologies like artificial intelligence or machine learning on top of this data, which is like the immutable truth, what we would like to call, would probably give that kind of prediction models in terms of like this part fail, would there be a safety issue if you use this in combination with something else, right? So today, is it possible? Yes, but how reliable is data that you are working on in terms of creating this prediction layers or this predictive intelligence. But with blockchain, with the immutability of information that we can offer, I think the predictive modeling can be much better. That is how probably I would look at in terms of how it can address the safety and the other issues.
Okay, that's an interesting thought. And if I translate that maybe out, I have another business associate who his name is Jim Baccarosa, and they have a company called Provin Air. And what they do is they actually they do back to birth tracing of landing gear parts. Okay, and what he told me recently is that he never finds a landing gear that doesn't have a record problem. He said it just doesn't exist. All right, and so if you put that in the context of these kind of issues and problems, is that by applying blockchain technology or overall improving record keeping to the place where records are more established and they're more readily available, we should be able to project that and say we can improve safety because you have better record keeping or better accessibility to records. And so I would say that if we do have better visibility, and if we do have better record keeping, and if we do have improved supply chain management, we should be able to improve, safety and information and data about parts. And if we have better data about the parts, that should give us better visibility into managing, the safety and the maintenance of those parts. I mean, can you guys concur with that? Does that make sense?
Well, it absolutely makes sense. And then, with all the betters that you have said, also, one thing that I would like to add is, the trust in the data is also important.
Yeah.
That is what,
the trust. Yeah, the trust in the data. Yeah, right. Very good. Very good. So definitely, if we're putting the concept of blockchain into, some of the existing problems that exist out there, I definitely believe that having improved record keeping and having improved collaboration and trust in the records, like you said, that is absolutely going to improve visibility on maintenance and making certain that no maintenance events are missed or that things are done properly or better record keeping. And so, it's not a stretch of the imagination to say that, blockchain technologies have the ability to be able to improve safety. I think you can say that. Yeah, definitely.
That's right.
Okay. All right. Well, let's see if we have a few other questions here. We have some different people here. I just wanted to welcome Simon Barker. He frequently joins us with Aerospace Tech Review magazine. I appreciate you being here, Simon. Hey, thanks for giving us a shout out. And we have a few other questions here. Why don't we throw that one question up that we have there from Lewis? See if we can address that, and then we'll go on to the next. That's a long question. Blockchain can also serve as a means of universal transaction platform. All companies have centralized ledgers, databases. True. When sending an example for aircraft maintenance and aircraft supplier, there's a lot of persons who are to be paid, transaction information, making it inefficient, or expensive and slow. So let me just quickly comment on that is that I've had a lot of experience in working with companies who have difficulty keeping track of like MRO transactions, all right? And then they're doing a lot of reconciliation at the end, and nobody's paid until they're fully reconciled, at the end. And so definitely, if we're doing distributed ledgers, and if we're giving better visibility into transactions that are occurring and making them happen more rapidly, there's no question that we can optimize, payment, and we can optimize logistics through the application of these technologies. There's no question about that. That's really good.
Yeah. And
all right.
Mark,
go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to add one more point here. Going back to one of the previous comments that you have, like, can these benefits be achieved by existing technologies? Because you said we want to believe we already optimized most of the stuff, right?
Yeah.
So what happens is, yes, every one of us believe we optimize most of the stuff. So for a 1.5 million business saving, we spend, let us say, about $500,000 to $600,000, let us say. But the same 1.5 million saving, if you're able to do with $200,000, the optimization of business benefit is already happening. But can you optimize the same value at a lesser cost? That is where blockchain comes in and brings in efficiencies.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Good point. Very good point. Very good. Well, hey, listen, let's move. We have a couple of other cases we want to talk about here, other business problems, not just supply chain. So let's move to one of the next ones, that we have here. And let's see, it's warranties. So I know that I personally have experienced in the industry that there is a lot of difficulty in managing of warranties and contracts. I've actually been involved in some, smart contracts kind of deployments out there in the aviation aerospace industry, and so can one of the two of you, give us a problem statement? What is the problem that exists out there today with respect to capturing of warranty information?
Right. So Mark, I'll take that one.
Okay, please.
So if you see the pain points, there are basically 3 pain points which we are trying to highlight. The first one is 70% of aircraft or part warranty agreement today are paper-based. So there is certain amount of information which does get captured in the MRO IT systems, but largely most of the contracts, terms and conditions are manual or paper-based, and you need a big warranty team to actually understand and deeply introspect and capture the warranty contract conditions in a case where the claim is actually raised. So that the first point is it is largely paper based. Second point is we went through some of the warranty week articles as far as how the warranties are being managed today by the large OEMs, on the aircraft manufacturing and also in the engine OEM space. So what we saw that today in the aircraft manufacturing space, almost 70% of the aircraft, 70% of the warranties today are borne by the tier 1 suppliers, and the remaining 30% is actually absorbed by the OEMs themselves. I'm talking about the airframe manufacturers. And when it comes to the engine OEMs, we don't have such split, but what we have seen is the engine OEMs in the last 10 years, the warranty claims paid by the Indian OEMs has increased by almost 30% over the last 10 years. So there is a lot of warranty claims which the engine OEMs have to pay to their customers and others. So these are the 2 key statistics which we have seen, and between the airframe manufacturers, depending upon which aerospace manufacturer we are talking about, there is always up and down on warranty. That compared to previous year there was less warranty, vis-a-vis more warranty, but largely what we see was almost $1.3 billion was spent on warranty claims a couple of years back as far as warranties are concerned on the manufacturer side.
Okay.
Now these claims obviously
Yeah. So Kieran, help me unwind this a little bit, because there's a lot of information there. Okay. Is that, are we talking about warranties from a manufacturer standpoint or a consumer standpoint, or are we talking about both?
Actually, we are talking about both. The first part of the discussion is where we are talking about what the OEMs can claim against their tier 1 suppliers and what their tier 1 suppliers can claim against their tier 2 suppliers.
Okay, so let's take them one at a time so that people can kind of understand them. I think this is really important. Is that so you have an OEM or a manufacturer and they have a supplier, okay, and there might be warranty issues that exist. So they deliver maybe products or components that fail or that don't meet the specifications. How does something like blockchain help that specific instance or situation?
Right. So, Mark, what we have done is we are actually building a co-innovation solution with SAP. So what we understand is most of the OEMs and the tier 1 manufacturers are using SAP as their platform or as their ERP system for the manufacturing process. So this particular solution, what it does is it takes whatever information is there from the underlying ERP systems, your supply chain transaction, your warranty related contract information and other information, whatever is available. And additionally, warranty engines, warranty business rules can be built on the smart contracts, which we just spoke about in the last use case. So keeping these 2 things in mind, digital transactions or digital records can be created onto the blockchain platform with respect to proof of delivery, proof of part usage, and the warranty contract condition. So whenever there is so this happens when the part is actually manufactured or the component is actually manufactured and the part moves from tier 2 to tier 1 to OEM. Then when a claim is raised by an airline to the OEM and the OEM decides that OEM understands that this is a supplier related issue, what we actually are doing with the solution is this solution automatically points which particular supplier is responsible for the faulty part and whether that part is covered under warranty condition on the date of failure. And this way, the entire process is automated right from OEM to tier 1, tier 1 to tier 2, up to the tier N supplier.
Okay. All right. Well, so lack of visibility, it goes back to lack of visibility again, maybe, and lack of data or information. Tim Alden asked a really good question here, and I want to put it up on the screen because I think he comes from a standpoint of they actually sell an MRO system, and I think he asked a good question. Is it surely there's a chain already existing between the OEM and their own supply chain? Is that how is doing something with blockchain any different than maybe what exists today?
Go beyond the supplier, right? So the OEM has claimed the warranty on the assembly. So the supplier has paid the warranty or registered the warranty. But then the supplier can also claim it from next level supplier. Now for the next level supplier to be able to agree that the sub-assembly supplier will challenge. Give me a proof that what I delivered to you is what you have used, and that is what you have also delivered to the end customer, and that is what has become faulty. So there are 4 proofs that the supplier 2 requires from supplier 1 to be able to say that this warranty is claimable. That is not possible with today's systems because these proofs do not exist at one place.
Yeah, LV, I have personal experience where I visited an airline one time. They were actually in the Eastern European region. I visited them, and they had a very big backlog of warranty claims that had not been processed. And the reason they had not been processed is because they're difficult to administer, difficult to keep track of, to provide proof of. And so, on first glance, it might be to us to think, well, those systems exist. Why aren't people just using them? Well, if they're administratively difficult, or if they're not automated, or if they're hard to use, or if they require a lot of manual intervention, they just don't get acted upon. And I literally at this airline saw millions of dollars worth of unclaimed warranty claims because they just had not acted on them. All right. So I think maybe the initial reaction we have is that, systems have this capability, they exist, but the reality is that if they're not easy and effective and used, okay, then it just doesn't happen. And so if I hear what you guys are saying is that if we can create additional automation, create additional traceability, trackability, visibility, and put fundamental elements in place which make this easier, that the probability of being able to process warranties from all parties involved probably goes up. Is that really what I'm hearing you guys say?
Absolutely. That is the first part. The second part is, for a $10,000 claim, how much would you spend? Would you spend $8,000? Would you spend $1,000?
Yeah. Very good. Very good. So Kieran, is you actually, you guys have done a lot of supply chain optimization, and I guess you've seen a lot of warranty challenges and issues that have come up with different companies, right? I mean, you've seen a lot of that happening today.
Right, Mark. That's true.
Yeah.
So
okay.
as I gave you the example, these are some of the statistics which we saw in the warranty week for the aerospace and the engine OEMs. Likewise, we have done research for the other industries like automotive and consumer electronics and many others. In fact, one more interesting statistics which I found out was almost 1 in every 4 claims is missed out due to lack of proper warranty understanding. So you have warranty administrators who need to manually go through all these documentations and the terms and conditions and the contract conditions and infer and deduce whether the particular claim is covered under warranty or not. So imagine all this, if all these business rules were to be written on a smart contract, which is a kind of one-time activity, the amount of time spent by warranty administrators in understanding and evaluating this complex claim would be reduced very drastically. And when you have 2 parties agreeing to a smart contract or a digital contract, then it becomes binding to both parties to adhere to or agree to the contract terms and conditions. So it becomes very, very easy. Yeah. Or far easier in a otherwise scenario where you might end up discussing, deliberating, and it also might get into litigation incidents between parties.
Yeah. Hey, listen, we still have 1 or 2 more business problems that we want to talk about. But before I go to that, we've had a lot of really good questions and a lot of good activity. And I really, really appreciate that. And sometimes people come on and come off. And so I want to go back and address something that somebody brought up a minute ago before they might leave. But Patrick Blue asked, is there a solution that's available right now, and who provides it? The purpose for this dialogue that we're having here today, last week and this week, is to really talk about blockchain and the problems that exist out there in the industry. But yes, Real Variable does have a solution, and there's another number of other people that are in this chain of comments that have solutions out there. But Real Variable is going to do a webinar 2 weeks from now, which if you wanted to see the solution in more detail, you can actually go sign up for their webinar. It's at blockchain.digitalaircraft.org. We can maybe throw that banner up on the screen there so you can see that real quick here. You can actually sign up for their webinar on blockchain.digitalaircraft.org. And they're going to give a more detailed description of a particular solution or approach that they have implemented with respect to blockchain. But the discussions that we had last week and this week were really focused on helping people to understand blockchain and the business problems that are out there, so that people can vision and they can think about what could we do with blockchain and how could we potentially solve problems that are out there with blockchain. Hey, listen, the next one we want to go to is part track and trace. So talking about track and trace. Listen, I have heard the word track and trace out there. LV or Karen, can you tell me what is meant by track and trace? One of the two of you, please.
Yeah, sure. This is a very interesting subject for me, because this is the base platform for any of the solutions that you want to implement using blockchain. Okay, particularly in the supply chain. The simple reason being that when we talk about collaboration, we talk about manufacturers, suppliers, and customers. When we talk about warranty, again, we talk about the same set of participants. But then when we talk about the actual track and trace, we are talking about all the rest of the participants in the chain, including the logistics providers, the 3PL, 4PL players, your carrier engagement, your truckers, the actual delivery, the e-proof of delivery. All of that ecosystem comes in picture here. And then today's operations that involve right from the point of creation of a demand up to the point of delivery, they are very, very complex. The asset changes so many hands, and then let us say that you have an asset, and then that goes into a box, that goes into a pallet, and it gets broken into different boxes again, and then it gets shipped. So this is a very complex ecosystem. So establishing the track and trace of a part from the time of the forwarder picking the goods till they are delivered to the end customer, that is what we call it track and trace.
Okay, all right. And I think that we see symptoms of that everywhere. I talk to records companies and I talk to MROs and different people that are involved in different aspects, suppliers, and there's paper, there's lost records, there's inaccurate records. And so if we take all of those symptoms and put them together, I think what you're trying to tell me is you're really trying to go back and address the root cause is what you're trying to do. Exactly. If I understand what you're telling me correctly. Okay, all right. So Karen, can you tell me what are some of the places where track and trace has been used out there in the industry today? How is that being applied in some of these problems that people have today?
Right. So, Mark, auto industry, logistics, there are many places, many instances where this kind of solution is being used today. And the benefits is immense when compared to what it was before such a solution was actually built. So one of the examples which I just gave in the first use case was regarding the automotive player and how the automotive player and the logistics player collaborated and came together, collaborated, and we had this track and trace solution built to them. So it all depends on the size of industry, Mark. And if you compare auto with respect to aviation, so in an auto, let's take an example of an auto car, a vehicle. So you have around 40,000 moving parts in a vehicle. But when it comes to aviation or an aircraft, you have 3 to 5 million parts per aircraft, and that is huge. And when it comes to tracking and identifying which part is attached to which aircraft, when this part was serviced through the value chain, before the part was actually delivered to the particular operator, it becomes a Herculean task to actually do that kind of traceability, because you have to contact several agencies, several authorities in order to identify that information. So if you imagine this kind of information, if it were available in a digital format, which would be easily accessible. So that brings in a lot of faith and trust in the system altogether. And almost 90% of aircraft maintenance records today are paper-based. So as you just mentioned, a lot of documents, missed documents, all this adds to the chaos, and it becomes very difficult to do audits, due diligence at a later point of time.
Yeah, very much so. It becomes very complicated. And so I think that any time that we're able to improve, it makes a big difference. LV, did you have something to jump in on there? Yeah.
Yes. So one of the biggest advantages that people saw is to create the customer confidence in the brand.
Yeah.
Okay. So imagine a situation where this is a reality now. A person in Australia, a dealer in Australia, is actually making a call to the owner of the vehicle saying that your part is custom cleared. It will arrive in a couple of days. Can I make an appointment for servicing your vehicle? So they do not have to wait until somebody tells them the customer clearance has happened. Track and trace solution automatically alerts them that this particular part is custom cleared. You get my point? So it's that kind of this one. So applied to the airline industry. I'm not a subject matter expert in that, but I could say that if you have planned a maintenance schedule and that you need these parts for those maintenance schedules, and then having a certain alert at a track and trace actually gives the ability to plan your maintenance schedule and then make sure the resources are available for that without having to depend upon 2-3 different people giving 2-3 different sets of information.
Yeah. Hey, go ahead, Kieran. Go ahead, jump in. Yep.
Especially during unplanned maintenance, Mark. So, this example fits in perfectly in case of unplanned maintenance. So, in a planned maintenance, you will do everything properly. You'll get all your parts on time. You have all your labor, all your, services, everything will be done on time. But when it comes to unplanned maintenance and you need a part urgently on a quick basis, this kind of track and trace solution brings in that additional level of security that yes, you will get the part on time, you will be able to complete your activity, and the aircraft will be back in air without any delays or cancellations.
Yeah. Hey, guys, about this time in a broadcast, about 45 minutes into it, people are their eyes are starting to glaze over, and they're thinking I've heard too much information at this point. And I want to go back to something. Is that I want to ask you a question? Is that we've talked about a lot of things, and we've said we can optimize things, and you can make it better, and you can collaborate better, and and we can have better records and better visibility, and and right about now there's somebody sitting out there that says that but the tools you have out there today can do that too. How is the application of blockchain technology in a blockchain platform any different than the tools that exist out there today?
As long as the tools that exist out there today gets the information from the ecosystem through the whichever channel that are available from the centralized ledgers, then reliability and trust becomes a major issue. Where blockchain will add is that reliability and trust of information, because none of the participants can deny to share the information, or none of the participants can fudge the information.
Yeah, I think that a couple of things that you guys have said today are really key to me that I think I really want to remember. And one of those is that your ability to be able to provide this kind of capability is much easier using a blockchain platform than it is with other solutions. That's number one. All right. Number two is that I have personally seen companies that don't optimize supply chains, or that they don't recover warranties, or they don't have good record keeping, because of the administrative issues that are wrapped around that and the difficulty in actually using solutions today. All right. So you might be one of those people that are sitting out there today and say, but solutions exist today and you just have to use them. Well, that's great. And that's all good and well. But if you don't use them, and if they're too hard to use, or if they don't give you the information you're looking for, then you don't get the results you're looking for. And so I think one of the key things for people to think about today that are watching is that from our discussions in the last 2 weeks is that blockchain technology, number one, the platform has been established to be able to make it easier to be able to implement this kind of technology. All right. And by providing improved collaboration, and by providing distributed ledgers, and by providing, immutability, the ability for things not to be changed, and the trust that revolves around all things, and making that information more widely available, it becomes easier to be able to solve the problems that we have today. All right. The problems aren't really any different. I hear that blockchain is creating the opportunity to be able to make it easier to solve the problems that we're struggling with today. Is that an accurate capture of the situation, guys?
Absolutely. And then, with the information explosion that is going to come in the next 20 years, we have to start looking at these kind of solutions to be able to, optimize the cost over a period of time.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, guys, listen, I think we have covered this subject, quite well today. And, I'm going to take one last thought. I'm not going to put the question up there because it's too long. It's several lines long. But somebody asked here in a question, they said, well, what about applying blockchain technology to the leasing industry? Okay. With the concept of title assets and, maintaining assets, things like that. What are your thoughts on applying blockchain to the assets that are involved in, an aircraft in the leasing industry? What are your thoughts on that?
That's Kiran's favorite subject, and he is already
okay. All right.
he's already working with a couple of lessors, I think, right, Kiran, in terms of putting this idea
yes,
out.
that's one of my favorite topics. Yes, you're absolutely right. So, to answer your question, it all comes down to the digital twins. Actually, the concept of digital twin, which we touched upon in the last webinar, last discussion. So, digital twin of a part and digital twin of an aircraft is actually going to make a game changer. So, when you have the history of a part, where it was, at which point of time, which was the organization which maintained it, what were the credentials of the engineer who certified that part, is there any incident recorded against that part? All these things will be of huge value to a lessor. And when you have the entire aircraft, its configuration, the position codes, and the various serial numbers attached to various position codes, so when all this information rolls up and becomes gets attached to an aircraft, then it is called a digital twin of an aircraft. Now, digital twin of an aircraft is something what the lessors would be really interested in, because it not only gives them the latest or the most recent or the most accurate information of the serial numbers attached to various position codes for the various components. It also gives them the information about the models can be built on the latest value of that particular part, depending upon the maintenance history or the digital provenance of that particular part itself. So in an otherwise scenario, aircraft lessors end up using their own engineers or third party agencies to do an aircraft audit to identify or evaluate the most recent value of an aircraft, the latest value of an aircraft. So we certainly believe that this kind of blockchain solutions will help the leasing industry and help reduce the amount of time and effort required to do valuations, which otherwise has to be done physically by a large team of people.
Great.
And for every aircraft.
Great. I was personally involved in, a lease return one time, and it took us 3 months to do records researches. And I've seen plenty of airlines with problem records. And when they go to return the aircraft, they have a lot of liability that exists because parts weren't, in the condition required per the contract. And so there's a lot of things that revolve all around that. I think the whole idea of digital twin is another discussion for another time. But LV, did you have a quick comment on that?
No, what we are trying to build are, our passion, what we're trying to do across the industry is, create the digital journey of physical products.
Yeah.
That is what we are trying to do.
Yeah. Okay. Very good. Good. Well, hey, listen, I wanted to, again, tell you is that the purpose for our 3-part series in blockchain was, number one, to begin to introduce you and try to untangle some of the thoughts and the concepts behind blockchain, because I hear it all the time, and many times it's confusing, and I don't really know how it really applies to what we're doing and where we're going in the aviation industry. But our goal was, in the first part that we did, was to be able to unravel some of the thoughts of blockchain so people would start to better understand it. Number two was to be able to focus on the business problems that are out there and how the application of blockchain technology, might be able to help solve some of those, problems out there, right? And then number three, we wanted, for those of you that might be interested out there to get more information, is to dig in and maybe see an actual application of blockchain technology. And so 2 weeks from now, we're actually going to do a webinar. It'll be on a Zoom session because it's easier to do a more detailed, discussion around a product itself if we're in like a Zoom session. So if you'd like to sign up for this Zoom webinar, you can go to that URL that's scrolling on the screen there right now, blockchain.digitalaircraft.org. And at that webinar, there'll be some discussion of blockchain, there'll be some discussion of problems, but there'll also be an unraveling of a solution and how that solution really has been successful in solving some of these big problems that we're talking about. Guys, I want to wrap it up today. I really appreciate you being here today and your expertise and your enthusiasm, toward blockchain. Hey, I am all about recovery in aviation. I want to help the industry to recover in aviation, all right? And finding ways that we can reduce cost and create optimizations is definitely a way that we can recover in aviation. And you guys are all about doing that. And I really appreciate what you're doing in the industry and how you're helping companies to be able to optimize, within the industry. I really appreciate it. Guys, thank you for joining today. I appreciate your knowledge and your insight.
Thank you very much, Mark.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Hey, to everybody out there watching, thank you for joining another session of Recovery in Aviation. We try to bring them regular to you weekly or twice a week even, and invite you to join us in the future again for a session of Recovery in Aviation. Thank you for joining today. Fair winds and following seas to you, and have a great day. Bye.